Just when we thought Apple was going to release iOS 26.3 this week, Apple goes ahead and drops iOS 26.2.1 to the general public today on Monday, just when they announce the AirTag 2, which is exactly what this update's for, along with some other bug fixes that we'll talk about in a little bit. So in this video, we're going to talk about everything new, starting with the size of this update. And you can see here, it's a relatively small update. It's actually bigger than what you'd think for, everything included in this update, but it's 704 megabytes on my iPhone 16 Pro Max right here, but it should be under 1 gigabyte regardless of your device. And if we head in to check out the build number, you can see that the new build is 23C71. And if we go back and check out the modem firmware, that has also received an update, 2.20.04 for the 16 series. And if you have an iPhone 17 series, it's 1.20.07, up from 1.20.06. All right, so now what's new here in iOS 26.2.1? And if you're new to the channel or you just don't follow these software updates very closely, you should know that a double point update, so when there's 2 points in it, like 0.2, 0.1, that indicates a small bug fix change or very minor changes, such as adding support for a new product. So don't go into this update expecting new changes to your home screen, new lock screen customizations, nothing like that, because you are not going to receive it. These double point updates are always going to be small updates because it's kind of bridging the gap from 26.2 to 26.3. Those are where the actual features come in, the actual big changes that you can see. But this update is going to be relatively small just from knowing it's a double point update. Now, also, if we go ahead and read the release notes here, it says that this update provides support for the AirTag 2nd generation. That is the big, reason for this update launching to begin with. So today, Apple did announce the AirTag 2, and this does include some nice new features. So it does have the ultra wideband chip Gen 2, so the 2nd gen of the ultra wideband chip, which we first saw in the iPhone 15. This offers more powerful precision finding, so you can now find your AirTags up to 50% further away than you could with the AirTag 1, so that's really nice. There's also a new Bluetooth chip inside for longer range. We have a new chime sound, and that chime, so when you're looking for a device, when you're looking for your AirTag when it's lost, it now has a 50% louder speaker, so you'll be able to hear it from much further away. But as far as the overall design goes, it does look exactly the same. So unfortunately, we didn't see a smaller form factor or anything like that. It is exactly the same, which is honestly not, a bad thing. It's already a good size in my opinion. So this is available today for $29, or you can get a 4-pack for $99, so the same price as the first AirTag, and it's available to order today, and it will be in stores on Friday. You can actually get it shipped to you on Wednesday if you pay a little bit extra. Now, I also mentioned that Apple released watchOS 26.2.1, and that update enables the precision finding feature for the new AirTag 2 on the Apple Watch Series 9 and later, and the Apple Watch Ultra 2 and later. So before this AirTag 2 and before the software update, the precision finding for AirTag feature has been limited to just the iPhone. So now you'll be able to do the precision finding to find your AirTag, to find your device that you're tracking. You'll be able to track that with just your Apple Watch, and you won't need an iPhone. Now, notice in the software update page here, it does also say along with bug fixes. Now, it does not say what those bug fixes are. Of course, typical Apple doesn't really ever say what the actual bug fixes are. So as of right now, we're left in the dark to wonder what those bug fixes are. I know a lot of you guys have been asking me about the keyboard, if the keyboard bug has been addressed. So a lot of you guys have been having issues with the keyboard. There's been videos that have gone viral about the keyboard just simply not working. Like you type a key and it types a different key that you didn't actually press. So there's been a lot of issues with the keyboard, including keyboard lag as well. So as of right now, I've tested the keyboard in multiple applications and messages and notes, things like that. It feels the same to me as it did in 26.2, so I would not get my hopes up for the keyboard issues being resolved with 26.2.1. I would imagine that's going to take a much bigger update to fix. Apple may honestly not even fix that until iOS 27 at this rate. It's really not looking good for those keyboard issues because we've seen no progress on it thus far. But aside from the keyboard issues, I have had some of you guys tell me you've had issues with the Apple Home application. So your HomeKit devices sometimes would just say paused, or they would actually show any data after a reboot. It would take an additional reboot to fix that. That appears to be fixed. At least it it's fixed for me. And also if you have the HomeKit devices in the control center, some users were reporting issues with HomeKit devices, not working when you tap to change, like when you tap to turn on a light or open a garage door, it would not work from the control center. If you had that issue, please check and let me know if that has been fixed in 26.2.1. I personally never had the issue. I also removed my HomeKit devices from my control center because I accidentally press them all the time, but that is another issue that could be addressed with this update. And then when it comes to security patches, Apple did not mention any type of security fixes in the release page for 26.2.1, so I would not expect any type of security enhancements, security patches, anything like that. Apple has not published anything as of right now to their security updates page, so we cannot confirm that nothing has been added. However, I would be surprised if we see any security patches be added with this update, because Apple typically would mention that in the release page, the software update screen, if there were any type of security issues. Now, as far as the performance and the battery life goes, I would go into this update not really expecting anything to change with performance or for battery life, simply because this update was pushed out specifically to add support to AirTag 2 and for some bug fixes, but I would not expect those bug fixes to affect the overall performance of your device. So with that being said, I did run a Geekbench 6 test here, and you can see I scored a 3469 on the single core, 8587 on multi-core on my 16 Pro Max. So some respectable scores. iOS 26 is running well thus far, but I would not expect anything major, to jump in terms of performance from 0.2 to 0.2.1. Now, when it comes to the battery life, I'm currently at 63%. You could tell me what I started this video with, but once again, I would not expect any type of jump or really any type of decrease either in battery life. I would expect battery life to remain exactly the same as it was in 26.2. And if you had issues in 26.2 with battery drain, those could possibly be fixed with this update. However, I highly doubt it. I don't think we're going to see a fix for battery drain until at least 26.3 at the earliest. So with that being said, should you update to iOS 26.2.1? And I would say that if you're on iOS 26.2 or earlier, there's really no downside in updating, especially if you plan on getting the AirTags 2. I would highly recommend going ahead and updating right away so your device can, finish formatting and, finish all the backend tasks before you get that AirTag 2. However, if you're on iOS 26.3 beta, obviously you will not receive the 26.2.1 update. However, the addition of the, AirTag 2 support and things like that will be available in the next beta release, and of course in the final release as well. So you're not going to be missing out on that. And speaking of iOS 26.3, let's talk about when to expect that. So we are now in the final week of January, and Apple typically releases the 0.3 updates in January. It's been a while since Apple has not released a 0.3 update in January. However, it's looking like that could be, at risk for not coming in January this time with iOS 26. So we're currently still on beta 2. Now we might receive the RC build of iOS 26.3, the release candidate build for beta testers. We could receive that as early as this week. We could also see the final release of iOS 26.3 as early as this week. However, we'll have to wait and see on that. It could also come next week, the week of February 2nd. But regardless, I would expect to see iOS 26.3 get released to the general public, so not just beta testers. The final release should be coming out within the next week or so. I would not expect it to go much further into February because, of course, after 26.3 does get released, we will jump on the new betas for iOS 26.4. And as you guys know, iOS 26.4 is going to be a much bigger upgrade, a much bigger update than the 0.2 update and the 0.3 update, because it will include the new Siri revamp, which is powered by Google Gemini. So that's going to be a big update, and I will be covering that here on the channel. So make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss out on that. Now, the official release for 26.4 with that big Gemini Siri revamp is not going to come until some point, most likely in late March. So don't expect that to be out, within the next month if you are on public releases. That's going to be in beta for the entire month of February and into March as well. So just keep that in mind. But there you have it. That is iOS 26.2.1, a very minor update as expected for a double point update. It was kind of a surprise to see this update because we did hear about it quite some time ago. However, it didn't really make sense with the timeline with 26.3 coming out so soon. However, it does make sense that, this update was pushed out because of the new AirTag 2. So, we couldn't predict the AirTag 2 was coming this week. So that's why we couldn't predict 26.2.1 coming this week either. Now, because we have the AirTag coming this week and Apple released a 26.2.1, it does cast some doubt on 26.3 coming this week at all. We may end up seeing that in February after all. So we'll have to wait and see. We could get the RC this week and then the final of 26.3 next week. But you guys know, keep it locked here to the channel. I will keep you updated with everything going on with these Apple software updates. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching and I'll see you soon.